Buenos días, buenas tardes para los que nos veis también desde España, y buenos días a los que nos veis desde el otro lado del charco. Como sabéis, la sesión de hoy será en inglés, con lo cual vamos a cambiar inmediatamente a este idioma. Espero que sea ok para todos vosotros. So we swap into English immediately. And yeah, the first thing is to introduce ourselves. So this is José Luis Tobalina. As you know, I'm the coordinator of activities of the APDI, the Spanish Association of Lighting Designers. So welcome to our Open Doors sessions. These sessions started, in fact, at the beginning of the COVID pandemic 2 years ago. Because we have to find out a new way of communication, as we cannot have this offline activities, present activities. So we started these sessions, and I think it's good that we continue them also this year. That's the idea. These sessions is a tool that we give to our sponsors. APDI is an association that was born 14 years ago, and since the beginning we had very clear that we need to build a platform of dialogue with the manufacturers. They are developing innovation, they are developing solutions, they are developing the new technologies and products and services. And lighting designers, the core of our association, are the ones that at the end are also deciding which is the best solution for every project. So in this path between the creation of the innovation and the decision of which product or solution fits better to a project, I think it's good that APDI sets this platform of dialogue between them. And as I was telling before, between other tools that we have for the communication and promotion of our sponsors, we have these sessions, which is a short webinar, less than an hour, that we offer to give them the space to show us who they are, which is their main key success and selling arguments, and which are the best solutions. And to make these sessions very relevant to our audience also, we from the beginning decided that it was important to bring some of our members on board. So I will start with this. So we have today Bárbara connected, Bárbara Rodríguez Pando. I will make just a short profile before saying hello. Bárbara is an architect and lighting designer. He's senior member of the association. And after working in several studios of architecture, she specialized in lighting design, and actually she's developing her career as member of Lighting Design Collective. For those of you who do not know very well, Lighting Design Collective is a very, very interesting studio, very innovative, and they have a very, very, I would say, interesting approach for new and emerging technologies, and the relationship between technology and the space and light and the user experience of those spaces. So that's main of the core activities of Lighting Design Collective, where Bárbara is developing the career, as I said. And also Bárbara is combining this activity with some also teaching lessons in some schools. So welcome, Bárbara. Now, yes, I would like to see you, and I would like to say hello and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, José Luis. I'm happy to be here with you too. And I hope today's session is useful for everybody because it contains information that is good to refresh from time to time.
Thank you, Bárbara. Thank you, Bárbara. Yeah, as I said before, these sessions are really focused in one of our sponsors. And today we are very honored to have with us eldoLED. eldoLED is a company that joined APDI as a sponsor this year. For those also some short sentences about them. They are member of Equity Brands. They are world leaders in design and manufacturing of drivers for lighting systems based on LEDs. Their controllers and LED modules, high efficiency LED modules, they are bringing high quality to our sector, and well, they develop solutions for better control, more efficient systems, and well, that's especially what they do. And of course, today is the best occasion to know them better. Just also another information for you: this company eldoLED is represented and distributed in Spain by Lictum, which is a sister or brother company of Difusiona that I'm pretty sure that you all know about them. So to represent and to explain us which are the best products and solutions from eldoLED, we are very lucky to have with us today the Business Development Director, which is Patrick van der Meulen. So hello, Patrick, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for the introduction, José Luis. So I'm doing very fine here in Barcelona.
Okay, yeah, because also this is a virtual session. Patrick is these days in Barcelona making some visits there, so perfect. So just to finish, I will not like to steal more time to the session. I will be also connected in YouTube for all of you. So if you had any comment, any question, whatever, just please feel free to put them in the chat of the upper chat of the YouTube. If it's something very specific, I will interrupt them. If it's not, I will wait to the end to make some to pass the questions to them. So let's have a session. Our idea is to have maybe an hour or maybe a little bit less. So time is for you now, Patrick and Barbara, and I leave you for the rest of the session. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, José Luis, for the introduction. As I discussed, my name is Patrick van der Meulen. I work for eldoLED now for over a year, but I've been involved in the lighting industry for more than 25 years already. And today's session, I'm really pleased that I'm also working together with Bárbara, who already know for many years, being based in Lighting Design Collective. So today, I'm going to show you some background information, of course, a little bit about eldoLED, but more important topic is why LED drivers do matter in your lighting installation. So the content for today is first, I'm going to explain a bit about what is an LED driver, and then we go into more depth, but not too deep, because that's not the purpose of today's session. We're going to show you what is important to have a good lighting driver in your project, and also what are the characteristics of a good LED driver, so you have fewer troubles in your projects. So first, an LED driver. LED driver, it's just a piece of hardware, electronic component. Usually, it's part of the lighting system, but it's not always integrated in the lighting system. It can also be outside the luminaire, and here we have an example of a linear luminaire where the LED driver you see on the bottom left, it's a component that actually will control the LEDs, and on its other hand, it becomes information from a control system, and the control system could be a sensor, it could be wireless controlled, but it could be also, for example, DALI or DMX. Most of the time, a driver is fed with AC power, so coming from the grid. So what does an LED driver do? It basically has a few, let's say, limited functions, but they can be very important. First of all, it switches the light on and off again, and it makes sure that it does it at the right level. It also takes care of the dimming, because you can imagine, depending on your project, you want to have different intensities for different light layers in your project. And what the driver actually does, it converts the energy it gets from the power supply into a electrical current to the LEDs, and that will actually make the LEDs light up again. And a driver is usually also the starting point for when it comes to wireless controls, because at the end, the driver needs to receive information. It has an input for controls, and it could be wireless controls as well. So if you look at At the system, on a schematic view, on the left, you see the dimmer or the controller, and on the right, you see the luminaire. And the dimmer controller sends out a language, some kind of information. And what we do is we take this information and going to translate it into an LED current that will be given to the luminaire. And this will create your lighting system. So when you look at drivers in the market, there's a huge variety. You have different dimensions. They can have a metal housing, they can have a plastic housing. Some are just a PCB only because they can be used in other types of housings. And what you see here is actually the range of eldoLED drivers, where we have multiple form factors in terms of power. Drivers can handle from 10 to over 700 watts. In terms of controls, you can have DALI, you can have LED code, which is a proprietary solution, DMX, or even 0 to 10 volt. And then when it comes to the dimming, it's important to do that in a flicker safe way, which I'll explain later in this presentation. And the driver can also be programmed for just white on off with dimming. It can be used for tunable white. It can be used for dim to warm, or dim to dark, where you go very deep in the dimming. When you look at the drivers, of course, the applications are very wide. So in the top left, which is also my background for this presentation, is actually the National Portrait Gallery in London, in the UK, which is using our drivers as well. But it can also be used outside, of course, if you have them in a good enclosure, which can be used for architectural lighting. But it can be used in restaurants. It can be used on yachts, hospitals, offices, concert halls, libraries, you name it. There's a driver solution for every application. So now I just explained to you what a driver is or what it does, but why is it important to have a good lighting, good LED driver? So if you look at the topics of the next slides, first I'm going to talk about the dimming. How important is it to have good dimming? Next, I'm going to show you why it's important to have no harmful or even visible flicker. I'm going to explain about controls, interoperability, the programmability of a driver, and I'm going to have a little technical detail, which is about LightShape. LightShape is a technology which has been used by eldoLED actually to improve your tunable white projects. And at the end, we will show some where you can get some more information if you need any support on your project. So what about perfect dimming? So if you look at the dimming, there are basically two influences. One is the control part, so what is coming out of the controller or your dimmer, that can determine the way how you dim in a good or in a bad way. And on the other hand, it's actually what's coming out of the LED driver, because you can have super dimming, good dimming, but if you have an LED driver which actually is going to give a current to the luminaire in a, let's say, I would always say, in a very cheap, easy way, then this can cause flicker. But let's first look at the dimming. So what is important and why eldoLED is always pushing for what we call dim to dark, going as low as possible, what we call 0.1% in dimming. It's very important because your eye is not linear as you would expect with the dimming. So if you have an LED driver and the manufacturer will say, oh, we do very deep dimming, we go down to 10%. That means, 90% reduction, you think, but it means actually when you look at the light source, when you look at the luminaire, actually you will still have 32% of the original light level left. And that's to do with the fact that your eye is not linear. It actually has a logarithmic curve. So even dimming down to 1% will still give you 10% light. And we get quite a few calls where people say, well, on your driver, it says 1%, but we still see a lot of light. That's because they've used the driver that actually would dim only to 1%. But with dim to dark, you can create very nice ambiances, atmospheres, which I show in a few pictures as well. And this would actually result in around 2 to 3% light level. And that's very important, especially when you look at certain applications such as this this bar, which is actually part of a hotel in Bangkok. And here it was not important how bright you could make the fixtures, but how dark you could make the space, how dark you could make the environment. At the end, what you want to create is a very nice atmosphere. And by dimming very low, you can actually create these very nice atmospheres where you can have very nice light layers as well. And even not important to the dimming as we speak right now, what is important as well is the programming. So for example, this project was actually commissioned completely during COVID, where actually the lighting designer was offsite, so not actually in the installation, but actually had a very good tool to program the fixtures from a distance. Another project we have here is actually a concert hall auditorium in Australia. And originally, the manufacturer did decide to use not an eldoLED driver, but somebody else's brand. But the problem was that the fixtures didn't dim down. So they were probably used to have you'd use halogen before, I assume, and now they moved to LEDs, and the expectations were very high. But at the end, when they showed the final result to the end user was not happy at all. So what they've done is they were looking for a driver that actually would dim much deeper and actually would deliver the promise that was actually given to the client. So they actually replaced all the drivers by eldoLED drivers, which dim down to 0.1%. And now the end user, the owner of the auditorium, was very pleased with the result. And also the lighting designer was very pleased, and he now knows what drivers to use when he's running into projects like this.
Patrick?
Yes.
Just to add, I think it's very important dimming to dark, not only to create a nice atmosphere and to dim very deep, but also when you want to change scenes, and one scene to the other consists on dimming to dark and then turning off, because if that last step is too high, it feels very unnatural. Even if you go very slowly, it feels much better when you are able to dim almost to off and then off.
Yeah, I agree. Otherwise, it feels like a flash.
Yeah.
And the same, of course, when you turn the lights on. If you turn the lights on from 0 to 1%, you can actually have a flash, and then the light will start to dim onto the intensity that you want. So yeah, I agree with you. It's very important.
Yeah, me too.
Another thing that is very important when specifying a good LED driver is that you don't have any harmful or visible flicker. In this case, we had a project. This was a dentist practice in the Netherlands, and actually later we found out there were more issues. But actually, there was one of the employees that actually was already off sick for quite some time after they replaced all the lighting in the practice. And I'm just going to show you a short movie that actually will explain what I mean with flicker. So what you did see in this short movie is actually the before and after installation. So before they actually replaced the drivers by eldoLED, there was actually flicker, and the flicker was captured on camera, but it wasn't visible when you were actually in the space. But the employee that actually I mentioned before was really feeling sick, not knowing where it came from. And when they replaced the LED drivers by eldoLED drivers, which actually control the flicker, And actually they could change because it was a smaller installation. They changed the drivers overnight, and the next day they actually asked the employee to come and have a look at the new lighting. She did feel much better. And then this is a good example what actually it can do for you. So flicker, how is it actually caused? So before LEDs, the light sources always would turn on and off on a very slow speed, and therefore it was not visible and not also harmful to us. But with the introduction of LEDs, flicker was introduced because LEDs were it's a semiconductor device, and it was turning on and off so quickly that actually it would react to the variation in the driver, because the early days drivers were actually using PWM. Maybe you've heard the term before, which is an abbreviation for pulse width modulation. So it's a dimming system where the driver is actually switching the current to the luminaire on and off in a very fast way. But very fast means not 600 times per second, but you need to do it at least 2,000 times per second to actually prevent any visible or harmful flicker. So that's why it was not really a good system. Another solution could be to use a CCR, so constant current reduction dimming. That then you don't have any flicker because you just change the current to the LED driver. You don't have any noise. That could be disturbance to other signals. But the thing was that you couldn't actually dim really low, and also if you would go very deep in dimming, then you could actually get a color shift. So what, in combination with the flicker, because one of the eldoLED engineers from the early days, actually his wife was actually really sensitive to this flicker. He started to develop a new topology, actually to combine best of both worlds. So basically we were combining now the PWM dimming and the constant current reduction. And that's what we call in eldoLED terms hybrid hydro drive dimming, which is a really optimized dimming. So basically we change the current, and then over the current we have a PWM signal, but the PWM signal is changing the frequency all the time. And it's a very low peak, so you don't have the LEDs, turning on and off so rapidly because they don't completely turn off, and that's a big advantage. And this really meets the regulation. So if you want to specify an LED driver, you need to specify that it needs to meet either the IEEE standards, which it's called IEEE 1789, or in Europe, it's more familiar. It's called the Eco Design Regulation. So if you write this into a specification, then the manufacturer needs to fulfill these requirements, and that will actually safeguard you from the flicker issues that we've seen in the previous movie. Okay, now we've solved the dimming, we solved the flicker, but what about controls? Because controls is very important as well, because at the end you have your LED driver. It's been talked to, and talking to means you will give some information to the driver, and that the driver will translate it into this current. There are different standard protocols. You can think about pulse dimming, 0 to 10 volt, DMX, RDM, DALI, DALI 2. These are all standards. So basically what means that if people have been working together to create a standard, to create a specification, and if you have drivers in this standard, you need to comply to these standards. So that means that you as a lighting designer are really safeguarded that actually when you have a product with a DMX logo on it, that it would be compatible with a DMX driver. And with DALI, it was the same. Although in DALI, in the early days, it was standardized, but there were still some, we call it dialects. It's between Catalan and Spanish. You would still have some dialects. So that's why the DALI 2 standard came to life. And with DALI 2, this has been more safeguarded. There are other control systems as well. One of them is, for example, Casambi. Casambi is based on BLE, so which is Bluetooth Low Energy. So there's a standard of a BLE, so Bluetooth Low Energy, but Casambi is not fulfilling this standard. Although they're a very good control system with interoperability between all the Casambi products, it's not a standard. That is important to have the standard is very key, because you don't want the lights to react wrong to the messages that you're sending. So basically that's why it's very important to have this good interoperability. And yeah, as mentioned before, there are all these standards, and within eldoLED we're also member of all these standards. And most of the time, we're also a contributing member, means that we actually give information into these certification bodies to make sure that the standard is safeguarded. Another thing that's really important is that your driver is programmable. Programming could mean you can change the current to change the output of the driver, but also important is the dimming curve. With dimming curve, I mean the way that the driver is reacting to the input, because at the end, what you want as a lighting designer, at the end you want to have a linear curve. So what is really important is that you have different types of control systems. If you think about Lutron actually uses a linear dimming curve. That means that your driver needs to be logarithmic, because having these two together will result in a linear end result for the end user. But in general, DALI standards usually are around logarithmic dimming curve. So if you have a logarithmic dimming curve, that means your driver needs to be set to a linear dimming. And these two together will actually result again in a linear behavior of your application. So you can have different ways of doing this. And with DMX, we can have some other dimming curves, but that usually has to do with the transition between the colors, so moving from one color to the other color. To be able to program drivers is also very important when you want to set the current. So for this, we have a tool. It's called Flux Tool. It's a combination of software and hardware where manufacturers can order the drivers pre-programmed at the current they want, but we can also change the current in the field if needed. And this is very important because usually you don't know yet what you want to reach in your application, in your project. So usually you want to fine-tune this, and you can do this on a driver level. And also sometimes the projects will take quite a long time. Yeah, it's common that it could be 5 years. So you start on your lighting design. The building is not started yet, and at the end, when the building is finished, there's been quite some evolution on the light sources, on the luminaires. That would mean that if you want to reach the same lux levels in your application, that actually you need to reduce the current to the LED. So that's why it's important that the drivers are fully programmable. Now let's talk about color. Let's talk about tunable white. So if you would have a driver, I don't know if you're familiar with the DALI 2 and DT6, we could have another hour on this, but we'll make it really short. So this is actually a standard around dynamic white. And of course, there's also DT8, but that's not been discussed today. So what you can do is you have a tunable white light source, which consists of a warm and a cool array of LEDs. And you can control them with DALI. So in the ideal world, you have a slider A, which is controlling the warm white LEDs, is connected to a driver. And it could also be an integral driver, which actually is 2 drivers in one. And then you have a control slider B, which will control the cool white LEDs. So now the challenge comes for you as a lighting designer, where you now want to set the color and the intensity. And this is where the problem comes, because when you have used slider A and B to set the right color temperature, that's fine. You still need your color meter to measure the right color temperature, but then changing the intensity becomes a bit more cumbersome, more difficult. And so for this, eldoLED invented the technology called LightShape. So with LightShape, we actually program the characteristics of the LED, of the light source, into the driver in such a way that now you have possibility that slider 1 is actually controlling the intensity and slider 2 is controlling the color temperature. So in this way, you can set your color temperature as requested, and then you can just use the intensity slider to change the intensity of your luminaire. You can also use it for other ways. You can imagine that you're using multiple manufacturers. So you use one manufacturer for downlights, one manufacturer for decorative lights, and you use another manufacturer for linear lights. So in this case, let's assume you have a linear tape product which actually has a range in terms of tunable white from 2700 Kelvin until 6500 Kelvin. And in combination, you have some downlights which actually have a range of 1800 Kelvin to 4000 Kelvin. What you want to do in your application is actually have these matching with each other, because it doesn't make sense that you have very warm downlights and very cool linear tape. You want to match them with each other. So for this, we can also use this, let's say, LightShape technology, where we're now going to program in the driver that I tell the driver, this is the light source, this is the range of the light source, but for controls, the color control, I want to use only 2700 Kelvin to 4000 Kelvin. In this way, now when I look at my installation, my application, I actually have a color temperature slider, which is moved from 2700 to 4000 Kelvin, and I have my intensity slider. And whatever color temperature I choose, both products will actually look similar. We have a small demonstration, and it kind of tries to explain what we do here. So we just talked about these light sources that move from 2700 Kelvin to 6500 Kelvin, and a light source that moves from 1800 to 4000 Kelvin. So what you see in the bottom left, you see actually these two light sources lit up. But if you look really deep into the white dots or the yellow dots, you see that in the top light source, there are far more dots turned on than the one in the bottom. So that means that actually here I mix some cool and warm white LEDs to create the right color temperature. So to create 2700 Kelvin from my light source, which is actually 1800 to 4000, I need to mix both light sources to create this 2700 Kelvin. Well, the bottom light source is actually 2700 Kelvin to 6500 Kelvin. To create 2700 Kelvin, I just turn off all the cool LEDs. I only have the warm LEDs on, and that's why you see fewer LEDs actually on. And the same counts for the picture on the right, which is then going to the extreme, in this case, 4000 Kelvin. So you see that some the LED difference are you know, there's some slight LED differences, but if I would put a diffuser on top, then they would look identical. So I have two different light sources, but with my LightShape technology, I can actually make them look the same. So this is very important. Then, of course, support is always important. So if you look at eldoLED, we have worldwide coverage, also when it comes to voltages, because if you might be aware that over the world there are many different voltages used. So we supply drivers for all these different voltages. If you have a project in Japan, or you have a project in India, or a project in the UK, or even in Spain, we have the right solution for you. And of course, it's always difficult to specify the driver. I just want you to know that actually we team up with many of the well-known manufacturers. So the manufacturers that I mentioned here they all know eldoLED, and they're all using eldoLED in their projects, in their applications. But also always be sure to check with them what they're using. And then in case of you run into issues or support, we always have a local team that actually can support you. And as mentioned by Jose Luis, here in Spain, we work very closely together with Divisiona / Lightum, here based in Barcelona. So they are your go-to person when it comes to support or even availability of the solutions. Some feedback from projects, from lighting designers. This is an example from Studio Michael Grubb in the UK. So they specified our drivers, and at the end they got the feedback from the installer, but also from the people that actually were doing the commissioning, that the eldoLED drivers were very easy to use, easy to program, and that actually gave them a smooth installation. The same feedback from the Netherlands. So this is actually a restaurant in the south of the Netherlands, and also here the end user is very happy with the final result, but also the installer had an installation without any issues because of the complete integration and the interoperability and the support they could get from eldoLED as well. So to summarize, what are the characteristics of a good driver? You need to take into account perfect dimming, make sure there's no harmful or visible flicker. Also make sure that you check the interoperability when it comes to controls, and also make sure your driver is programmable, either with the dimming GURs or setting the currents. And just to keep it in the back of your mind, of your head, what LightShape can do for you. So when you use a tunable white project, think about eldoLED, think about the LightShape and what it can do for you. And if you need any help, any support, we're always here for you.
Thank you, Patrick. Speaking of support, can you give us a little more insight on how we can defend our specification? Like, for example, you mentioned the standard eco-design regulation for flicker, but what would be the way to describe the dim to dark or the 0.1 dimming?
I would call it dim to dark, or even I would call it 0.1 dimming, because that will make the difference in your application. If you just write down dimmable driver, then you could get a driver that dims down to 10%. But if you really specify that you want to dim down to 0.1% in your specification, then yeah, there will be fewer options that can be offered.
Okay, thank you. And I would like to add that I totally agree with you about the versatility of the driver, because, for example, in our projects, we usually don't know what kind of lighting control system we're going to end up having. We usually explore some options and present this to the client, and it can end up being Lutron or it can end up being DALI. So being able to select the dimming curves is a very important characteristic of the drivers. So yeah, thank you.
I agree. Thank you. So yeah, to finish up this presentation, I just want to show you one more movie, and then maybe we can go over to the questions that maybe are coming from you. It's actually a project that we did in Spain, in Valencia, and it's a shopping mall. The last slide I show you here is actually that also our website and even YouTube is a good resource, getting more information about the controls, about the dimming, about the flicker, about LightShape, and even about sustainability, because the environment is very important, and also eldoLED security brands are really taking care of the environment when designing new drivers. So the project I'm going to show you is the shopping mall, the Saler shopping mall in Valencia, which is using a combination of different manufacturers and also variation of our drivers, which has a full integration into the project. Okay, thank you.
No, thanks to you, Patrick, and thanks to you, Barbara. It seems that we have very shy audience today because I don't have many questions. Well, in fact, I don't have any question at all. The chat of YouTube, maybe now people is going to write down some of them. But anyway, don't worry with that. I have some questions by myself. Of course, Barbara is a very experienced lighting designer, and she's been involved in many big projects, and she has experience enough to when doing the specification of a project, take care and understand that there can many things can happen at the end when specifying the products, and especially when you're doing controls and dimming and etc. No? But what would you recommend, Patrick, to a young lighting designer who's starting, who in principle they trust the aluminum manufacturer and they say, okay, they are selling me a package of the luminaire and the driver, and they say it's dimmable and that's it, and what do you recommend to them to take care of?
Yeah, what I would recommend actually, and maybe Barbara agrees, that I would actually create a kind of a checklist, like I mentioned in the characteristics of a good LED driver. So actually create a checklist and check whether manufacturers actually if they're meeting these specifications. And if people want, we can always help with generating these checklists. We actually have a short Word document where you can actually copy and paste the text as you want, that you can write down in your specification. But I would always check and don't trust the blue eyes of the manufacturer when it comes to the driver that they're using.
Okay, can you stop sharing so we can see our faces a bit bigger in the screen? Okay, good. That's good. Yes, as I said, we don't have questions in the chat, maybe because it was so clear and easy to follow for everybody. Not for me, I would say, because I'm not a lighting design expert, and especially in this kind of drivers, etc. So for me, it's really science fiction. But I think the explanation was very clear. I learned a lot with that. So not much more to add from my side. So I think it's a good opportunity to know you better, to know what you can do, and people get really aware of which are the consequences of the correct specification of a project, knowing exactly what they expect, and of course trusting the right partners, as I mentioned before. Barbara, I don't know if you want to add something to finish the session.
No, I'm good. I was also happy to participate and to refresh all of this knowledge. So thank you.
Yeah, that's what we ask to our members also, because well, Barbara has big experience and they can help us to really make the right questions and share some more. Oh, for example, I have a question for you, Barbara. And what are the main issues that you have faced in a big installation related to drivers? Give us some examples, not about eldoLED, of course,
Well,
but in general, I would say in general, not mentioning any brand, but in general, what are the big things that you have found, that difficulties that you have found? And the problem is that you find them when you're finishing the work. So at the end of the installation, then suddenly there's a flicker that you don't expect, or something, so problem of compatibility.
Yeah, all of the above. Like, well, maybe the flicker I haven't found, but the not able to dim to dark as DALI 2 driver that doesn't work with DALI 2, and you need to change all the drivers. So everything can happen. And I would say also one of our worst enemies sometimes is the decision makers, because sometimes we take care in the specification, but after there is value engineering and there's changing, and even if you, well, sometimes even if you write all the characteristics, if the decision maker doesn't understand the importance of a good driver, then probably they're going to change it for something else. So I guess part of our role is also to remind them how important it is. Like, you have a restaurant, you want a good ambience.
Yeah.
Or you have a hotel, or
so you can increase the prices because of the good lighting.
Right. So we have to go there to their,
because then they start the big
to their
fights
business
between the installer and the luminaire manufacturer and the driver, and the ball is crossing whose fault is that something is failing, no? Yeah.
Exactly.
That is also my question. What happens, because you are at the end you are ordering from different suppliers, so that can be an issue also.
Yeah, it is. I think like morally, we seem to have all the responsibility, the lighting designers, because you have specified everything.
Yeah.
But in practice, we might not, and we are not the contractor, and we are not the lighting control system supplier. So it's a double-sided problem. Yeah, we need to we need to contribute to finding the solution, I would say.
Anyway, we have already a long story of LED drivers, and I guess that everything is clear. I remember 10 years ago that the issues were quite common, no? When trying to connect a specific driver with some luminaire without the driver, and then everything started to fail. And now I think that the world has evolved and everything is more clear. Okay, let me check final view. Yeah, we don't have any questions again. So for me, it's just to finish the session and starting first of showing my gratitude to you both, starting with you, Barbara. Thank you very much for being available for us and helping us in having this session together. So thank you.
Thank you, Jose Luis.
Thank you.
And Patrick, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, for attending, and thank you for being around and being available and making us or approaching us these technologies and the key elements of the offer of eldoLED. So thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you very much for having us, and I wish everybody to have successful lighting projects. And thanks, Barbara, for co-hosting. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. So with that, we're going to finish now. So good afternoon to everybody, and stay tuned because we will be announcing the next sessions next week. We have already planned a new session. So, and I hope that is going to be, I don't know if as interesting as today, but we will do our best. And we continue with our program for the rest of the season. So thank you very much for being connected. As you know that this session will be uploaded in our YouTube channel. So please share it with your colleagues, friends, and people that may be interested and who could not make it today at this hour. So it will be available for everybody there. So thank you again to Barbara. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you also to Maria from Difusiona for hosting also and supporting all the coordination of the session. And okay, stay in touch and see you soon in this lighting world.
Bye.
Bye.